Ellie had always loved painting. It was a talent she inherited from her father, an artist whose work was both admired and feared for its unsettling realism. Her father had disappeared under mysterious circumstances a few years ago, leaving behind a legacy of hauntingly beautiful paintings. Every Father's Day, Ellie would visit his studio, hoping to feel his presence among the canvases. This year, the studio felt different. There was a heavy, oppressive silence that seemed to weigh on her shoulders as she entered. Dust covered the surfaces, and the familiar smell of oil paint and turpentine hung in the air. As she wandered through the studio, she noticed a large, covered canvas standing in the corner, one she had never seen before. Curiosity piqued. Ellie approached the covered canvas and hesitated before pulling the cloth away. The painting beneath took her breath away. It was a portrait of her father, but it was unlike any of his previous works. His eyes seemed to follow her, and there was a sadness in them that made her heart ache. At the bottom of the painting, in her father's handwriting, was a single word: help. Ellie's hands trembled as she reached out to touch the painting. The moment her fingers brushed the surface, the studio seemed to warp around her. The colors of the painting swirled and expanded, pulling her into the canvas. She found herself standing in a distorted version of her father's studio, where the walls seemed to shift and breathe. "Ellie," a voice echoed through the twisted space. She turned and saw her father standing there, looking just as he did in the painting, his eyes filled with a deep sorrow. "Dad, is it really you?" Ellie whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, it's me," he replied. "I've been trapped here by my own creation." The painting was a doorway, and something malevolent used it to pull me in. Ellie stepped closer, feeling a mix of fear and determination. "How do I get you out?" Her father pointed to a dark, shadowy figure lurking in the corner of the room. "That thing is the keeper of this realm. It won't let me go willingly. You need to destroy it, Ellie. It's the only way to break the curse." Ellie swallowed hard, her heart pounding. She glanced around and saw an old, rusty palette knife lying on a table. She picked it up, feeling its weight in her hand, and turned to face the shadowy figure. It sensed her intent and began to advance, its form shifting and writhing. Summoning all her courage, Ellie lunged at the figure with a palette knife. The moment the blade touched the shadow, it let out a deafening scream. The studio shook, and the walls started to crack and crumble. Ellie stabbed the shadow again and again, until it dissolved into nothingness. As the shadow vanished, the distorted studio began to fade. Ellie felt herself being pulled back into the real world. She landed on the floor of her father's studio, gasping for breath. The painting lay before her, now just a lifeless canvas with no trace of her father. She looked around, feeling a sense of loss, but also relief. Her father's spirit was free. She stood up and glanced at the other paintings in the studio. They seemed less foreboding, as if a dark cloud had been lifted. Ellie spent the rest of the day carefully packing away her father's paintings, deciding it was time to preserve his legacy and move on. She knew he would always be with her, in her heart and in her art. This Father's Day, she felt a strange peace, knowing she had freed her father from his torment and honored his memory in the best way possible. Father's Day had always been bittersweet for Sam. His father, a historian and a collector of rare artifacts, had vanished 10 years ago under mysterious circumstances. Sam had inherited his father's old study, filled with dusty books and relics from various eras. This year, Sam decided to spend Father's Day going through his father's belongings, hoping to feel closer to the man who had meant so much to him. As he rummaged through the cluttered shelves, he stumbled upon an old, leather-bound diary. The cover was worn, and the pages were yellowed with age. It was his father's handwriting. Sam carefully opened the diary, and his father's voice seemed to whisper to him through the written words. The diary recounted various expeditions and discoveries, but one entry, dated June 15th, the day before Father's Day, a decade ago, caught his eye. The entry detailed an encounter with a strange artifact known as the Mirror of Lost Souls, said to grant visions of those who had passed away. His father's words were filled with excitement and a hint of fear. He had planned to use the mirror on Father's Day, hoping to contact his own deceased father. Sam's heart pounded as he continued reading. The last entry was abrupt and unsettling. "I can feel it watching me. If something happens, please, Sam, forgive me." Determined to uncover the truth, Sam searched the study for the Mirror of Lost Souls. After hours of digging, he found it hidden behind a stack of old maps. It was a small, ornate mirror with an intricately carved frame. As he held it, he felt a strange energy emanating from it. He hesitated, remembering his father's warning, but his curiosity got the better of him. Sam positioned the mirror on the desk and sat down, taking a deep breath. As he gazed into the reflective surface, it began to swirl with mist, and a face slowly emerged, his father's face. "Dad?" Sam whispered, his voice trembling. "Sam," the figure in the mirror replied, its voice echoing faintly. "You must destroy the mirror. It is a gateway, and something dark is trying to come through." Tears welled up in Sam's eyes. "But I want to talk to you. I've missed you so much." "I know, son. I've missed you too. But there are forces beyond your understanding. You must trust me." As his father spoke, the room grew colder, and the mirror's surface darkened. The face of his father twisted into a grimace of pain. "It's coming, Sam. Destroy the mirror now." Panic surged through Sam. He grabbed a heavy book and smashed it against the mirror. The glass shattered, and a deafening howl filled the room as a shadowy figure began to emerge from the broken shards. Sam stumbled back, his heart racing. The shadow writhed and shrieked, but without the mirror's power, it began to dissipate, leaving the room in eerie silence. Sam collapsed to the floor, gasping for breath. As the adrenaline subsided, Sam felt a presence beside him, a comforting warmth. He knew it was his father, watching over him. Despite the danger, he felt a sense of closure. Sam carefully gathered the pieces of the mirror and buried them in the backyard, ensuring the dark forces would never return. That night, he slept peacefully for the first time in years, knowing his father had protected him one last time. From that day forward, Father's Day was no longer a day of sorrow, but a day of remembrance and gratitude for the father who had given everything to keep him safe. Father's Day had always been a somber occasion for Lily ever since her dad had died in a car accident 5 years ago. She still remembered the last phone call they had before the tragedy, his voice filled with warmth and pride. As the years passed, she tried to move on, but every Father's Day, the memories came flooding back, and the pain felt fresh again. This year, Lily was alone in her apartment, scrolling through old photos of her dad on her phone. As midnight approached, she sighed, put her phone down, and went to bed, hoping to escape her sadness in sleep. At precisely 3 a.m., Lily was jolted awake by the sound of her phone ringing. Groggy and confused, she glanced at the caller ID. Her heart skipped a beat. It was her dad's number. Trembling, she answered the call, her voice barely a whisper. "Hello?" "Lily." Her father's voice crackled through the line, distorted but unmistakable. "Lily, can you hear me?" "Dad, how is this possible?" she stammered, tears welling up in her eyes. "I don't have much time. he replied. "Something terrible is coming for you. You need to get out of the apartment now." Before she could respond, the call disconnected, leaving her in stunned silence. The room felt colder, and a sense of impending doom washed over her. Remembering her father's warning, she quickly got dressed and rushed to the front door. As she reached for the handle, she heard a strange noise coming from the living room. Curiosity and fear battled within her, but she couldn't help but look. What she saw made her blood run cold. A shadowy figure stood in the middle of the room, its form shifting and pulsating with malevolent energy. It turned towards her, and she could feel its eyes, though it had none, boring into her soul. "You should have stayed," it hissed, its voice like nails on a chalkboard. Lily's instinct kicked in, and she bolted out of the apartment, slamming the door behind her. She ran down the stairs, her breath coming in short, panicked gasps. She didn't stop until she was outside, under the streetlights, where the night felt safer, less oppressive. She pulled out her phone again and checked the call log. Her father's number was there, just as she remembered, but the timestamp was from 5 years ago, the night he had died. A chill ran down her spine as she realized the call was impossible, yet it had happened. The next morning, Lily contacted a friend who was knowledgeable about the supernatural. They met at a nearby cafe, and Lily recounted her experience. Her friend listened intently, then nodded gravely. "Sometimes, spirits find ways to reach out to protect their loved ones," he said. "Your father must have sensed the danger and used his connection to warn you." Lily felt a mixture of relief and sorrow. Her father was gone, but his love for her transcended even death. She vowed to honor his memory by living her life fully and fearlessly, knowing he was still watching over her. That night, back in her apartment, Lily felt a presence, but it was no longer threatening. It was warm and familiar. She whispered into the darkness, "Thank you, Dad." And for the first time in years, she felt a sense of peace on Father's Day. On the eve of Father's Day, the Johnson household was eerily silent. Emma, a 12-year-old girl, had always felt a peculiar unease around this time of year. Her father, who had mysteriously vanished 3 years ago, left a void that was never filled. Every Father's Day, Emma's mother would retreat into a shell of sorrow, reminiscing about the past, while Emma felt an ever-growing sense of dread. This year, Emma decided to confront her fears. She found an old, dusty box in the attic labeled "Dad's Stuff." Inside were forgotten memories, photographs, letters, and a peculiar, hand-carved wooden figurine of a man holding a child. As Emma held the figurine, she felt a chill run down her spine. She placed it on her nightstand and went to bed, hoping for a night of undisturbed sleep. Around midnight, a soft whisper awakened her. At first, she thought it was her imagination. The whisper grew louder, repeating her name. "Emma, Emma." She sat up, her eyes darting around the room. The figurine was now facing her, though she was certain it had been facing the other direction when she placed it. Emma's heart pounded as the whispers turned into faint, mournful cries. The air grew colder, and the room seemed to darken unnaturally. Summoning her courage, she reached out and touched the figurine again. Instantly, the room was plunged into darkness. Emma found herself in a shadowy version of her house, where everything was dim and distorted. She heard footsteps approaching, heavy, deliberate, and uncomfortably familiar. "Daddy?" she whispered, her voice trembling. A figure emerged from the shadows, a tall man with hollow eyes and a sorrowful expression. It was her father, but there was something terribly wrong. His once warm eyes were now cold and empty, his presence more ghostly than human. "Emma," he spoke, his voice echoing as if from a great distance. "Why did you bring me back?" Tears streamed down Emma's face. "I miss you, Daddy. Why did you leave us?" Her father's expression twisted in pain. "I didn't leave willingly. I was taken by the darkness. Now it seeks to consume you too." As he spoke, the shadows around them seemed to pulse and writhe, reaching out towards Emma. Her father stepped forward, his form flickering. "You must let go of me, Emma. Destroy the figurine. It is a tether to the darkness." Fear gripped her, but she knew what she had to do. She reached for the figurine, now glowing with an eerie light. As she lifted it, the darkness roared in anger, the room shaking violently. With all her strength, she smashed the figurine against the floor. It shattered into pieces, and a blinding light filled the room. Emma awoke in her bed, her heart racing. The figurine was gone, replaced by a sense of peace she hadn't felt in years. She knew her father was truly gone now, but his spirit was finally at rest. This Father's Day, instead of sorrow, Emma felt a bittersweet relief, knowing she had freed her father and herself from the clutches of the darkness.